Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mad Watcher TV. And welcome, Darlene Ondi, my partner, and Raphaelle to the show. And we're going to talk about Beyond the Veil of Climate and Social Engineering today. Welcome, both of you.
Well, we're thrilled to be here, and I'm waiting for Raphaelle to take herself off of mute there so she can say a brief hello. But we are so ecstatic about having a lady from down south joining us today.
Hello.
Hello,
I'm
Raphaelle.
thrilled to be here and to get to share with you guys for the next however long we get to share.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So, Darlene, I'll let you introduce Raphaelle a little bit since you've known her.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, and welcome to all the listenership and everyone out there in the world. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you not only a very good friend of mine that I had the pleasure meeting in Louisiana, right in the heart of NOLA, New Orleans. And that's a whole other conversation of how we met there. But she is also a very esteemed colleague. And the more I got to know this lady, the more I loved her. And she is definitely, first of all, she's a mom of a new I think a babe of 6 months old, and I don't know how old your son is, Raphaelle, but you can speak about your children in a moment. But, you know, she's been known for being out there in the world as an activist, a freedom fighter. She is a proud, bold, courageous woman, and it's my honor to stand beside her. And I wanted to read to you a bit about her, Brian, because she is so remarkable, and she's doing great work in the world, and she has such a fascinating story that we're going to go through, and I think all of you are going to want to hear from this lady more than once. So Raphaelle is also the author of the controversial children's book Funny Clouds, a Chemtrail Tale. She is a weather modification historian and a climate and social engineering researcher who in 2017 stumbled upon a $1 trillion secret, she says, is hiding in plain sight. And isn't that sort of the agenda of what we're experiencing in the world right now?
Yes.
Raphaelle has a decade of exposing the lies between the chemtrail, contrail lines and the various tools in the globalist depopulation toolbox. And just prior to CV, had challenged her city hall to prove 5G is safe for humanity, educating the world as well as her community about the dangers of an ever-growing radiative field and its effects on not only health, but weather as well. We are in a world of hot water, and Raphaelle breaks down and corrects the basic science obfuscated by the wrong narratives that take us beyond the veil. You're going to want to go to weathertruth.org. And she's also known as NOLA Butterfly. So welcome, Raphaelle. And Brian and I, we are beyond thrilled to have you here. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for attempting to take on this whole complex, interconnected matrix, so to speak, I guess would be the simple way of describing that. But thank you for your openness, your curiosity, and the platform.
Oh, you're
And it's
welcome.
been a pleasure knowing Darlene all these years. I just have to say, she's an outstanding human being. Her loveliness is only surpassed by her genuineness and her ability. This is her great gift to connect people together. And she's been a great force, I know, in just the world. So we're happy to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raphaelle. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us. And the weathertruth.org is listed down in the description, everybody. And I'm going to play an intro right now, if I may, Darlene, and then we'll continue on with the show with Raphaelle O'Neil. Oh, welcome back, everybody. And once again, thanks for joining us, Raphaelle.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled. And boy, do we have some things to talk about.
Yes, we do. And Darlene, I'll let you lead off the conversation where you'd like to go and set us up with Raphaelle today.
Well, Raphaelle, as you know, you've been very much a voice out in not only the arena in New Orleans, but basically for the world. And I know you've been really outspoken in regards to the jab awareness, and also in regards to what's been happening with the weather. And you and I have been corresponding a little bit about, the air quality that's been happening in Canada, where Brian and I are. And I recently just went out this morning and cut off a bunch of dead leaves. And these plants were just out on their own for a few days in this heavy, dense, and we knew it wasn't forest fire smoke. And the plants are fried. Like, they are absolutely dead. And I know that you have a lot to share about not only that, but, this $1 trillion discovery you made. I'd really like you to let the listenership know what you came across, because it's massive.
Yes. So long story short, and I can prove everything I say. And in fact, that's what the body of my work is about. And it's actually a journey in my own activism and curiosity. And I'll just say, who am I to even have this subject? First of all, I'm not corporate sponsored. I'm just an individual, maybe like you, maybe not like you, but I'm just a human being. I mean, in that I'm like every other human being on earth. And I caught a glimpse of something that just was the line in the sand for me. And I was curious about it. And I kept asking questions and I was willing to be honest. And I wasn't satisfied with narratives that didn't fulfill that need to understand what I was seeing. And so when I discovered the chemtrail narrative, I wanted to get to the bottom of it. It wasn't the narrative I discovered. It was the actual act of my sky disappearing behind contrails, one after the other, a blue sky day, and the contrails coming out. And one by one, little by little, the sky disappeared, and then it was a gray haze. And I saw that gray haze coming out of planes. And so I had just seen a movie, and I learned to call it chemtrails, which was part of a trap, but even though it wasn't inaccurate, but because language has been weaponized, chemtrails is a conspiracy theory. You don't get anywhere with it, no matter, had I just said, I saw contrails take out a blue sky, what is that? And ask that question, I wouldn't have been able to be debunked. I would have had to have been taken seriously by my meteorological community that I was posing these questions to. But because I had a label that had been deemed conspiracy theory, my concerns were dismissed. And that phenomena, the linguistic game, the nuance there, how some people can see it and others can deny it, and what the history is, and then learning the history and trying to awaken my community, realizing there was no one really discussing this within my community. And I said, oh, rats, I'm the one that's going to have to be this girl. I didn't mean to be. I just was curious and shared my findings with my community. And eventually, through the series of things, I wrote a children's chemtrail book. which was highly controversial. It opened me up to a series of attacks, which I had to then defend myself and dive deeper into the science. And I sort of created a flashpoint for people to come to, the Chemtrail Awareness Now, NOLA was a page I'd founded. And then I had a Beyond the Veil, which was a podcast which explored the narratives. And bit by bit, I realized that we had been set up in false narratives. And bit by bit, as I looked at the science, the basic science, and I realized, why is this obfuscated? And I kept interviewing people. And then through graces greater than me, things were put on my path that were pieces of the puzzle, when he who seeks finds. And so I was on the path. And so information was pouring in that I can't even get credit for. Like finding the Army captain who was ordered to bring as many body bags to New Orleans 11 days before Katrina made landfall. When in New Orleans, nobody knew just 3 days before Katrina made landfall that the hurricane was coming to New Orleans. And getting his testimony before he died, and having that on record, having a lot of pieces that just don't add up, and then making a discovery after one particular interview of a man named or an individual named Weather War 101, and realizing, and this is the crazy part, I had to build it up a little bit. I couldn't just say it because it sounds insane, but realizing that our hurricanes had the odd, uncanny way of drawing into the radars that were supposed to read the weather, no matter which hurricane it was. The eye of the hurricane was going right into the Doppler radars. The Doppler radar, the meteorologist uses to tell you what, is going to be, what your day is going to look like. It's so good at reading the weather, it can actually predict it according to the official narrative. Just a little bit, a few minutes or maybe an hour before, it's really, really good. But here's the deal. The likelihood of a hurricane going into a Doppler radar by the eye time and time again, Doppler and Doppler, one after the other, directly, not in between, not ping-ponging, but going right into the pool pocket, so to speak, was a statistical impossibility that demanded answers. And so I find myself right now in the position of telling the world something that it makes me uncomfortable even to this day, but the facts lay where they are. And so I must tell you that your storms, according to the further research I've done and the going back into history and all the research I've done, leads to this only conclusion that can be made, and is why I was able to predict the landfall of hurricanes multiple times, and I'm on record with it, and why the military knows about storms before they happen, and why I was able to call out Harvey before it happened, after getting intel from someone in the military who was told to pack his bags before it was renamed and reformed in the Gulf. And I was able to call it out on Facebook. So I'm on record with things, and my evidence is a matter of recorded history. It's a matter of radar captures. And so it's not really debunkable. And so what they've done, because I'm saying not just severe weather events, though those are the easy ones to prove, but also our daily weather is hacked, our hydrological cycle hijacked. We know about HAARP in the ionosphere. We've heard about that. If we've heard about chemtrails, it's not that obscure. HAARP, High Altitude Active Auroral Research Project, where it's an ionospheric heater that can expand the ionosphere, thus moving the jet stream. We know about that. We have the Air Force that admits, like in the video I sent you, Brian, just I think today, the Air Force admitting that they manage the ionosphere. Now, why the ionosphere needs to be managed, that's another question. But what we see with the Doppler radars is they're tropospheric heaters. And so they're weather on demand, and they're actually the checks and balances of our weather daily. And if you take the father of weaponized weather, so to speak, that Alex Jones interviewed, Ben Livingston, who weaponized weather in Vietnam, extending the monsoon season, taking out the Ho Chi Minh Trail with just a few cloud seeding projects. And it didn't take much to demoralize the forces this was an exercise that the Congress didn't find out about for 10 years. They were able to keep a secret for a decade without Congress finding out. And then it was like, oh, the UN came in and saying, no weaponizing weather now. And that's, that the Weapons Treaty Act. I mean, it's not really a law, but it was a thorn in the side. Now we've got geoengineering, which is chemtrailing for the good of the planet because of global warming. And while the global warming narrative kind of makes everything a moot point, if they're geoengineering, even when we went to the American Meteorological Society conference, whether meteorologists were saying, yes, no, geoengineering is a bad idea, but we might have to do it if it gets bad enough. We might have to do it. It's bad, and we don't know the consequences. It could be disastrous, but if global warming is bad enough, we might have to do it. And so this narrative gets threaded, and we watch this narrative get threaded while current weather modification was obfuscated from the report. Like in 2013, the World Meteorological Organization said that the United States, in their world weather modification reporting from the world, said that the United States was not reporting, the NOAA was not reporting weather modification projects that year. And yet in the same document, I asked them why they reported it. I asked the NOAA, I asked why they don't report anymore, because they used to. And we don't have to. Well, you never had to. Why did you stop reporting? They just don't answer. Crickets. And so you find out that in the same report of 2013, where they say the United States hasn't reported any weather modification projects, they talk about weather modification and who the people, the players that have been involved in weather modification the longest have been. And that's the hydrological companies in the United States for 50 years have been involved in weather modification projects for 50 years. But at the same time, all their papers, all their studies, all their experiments, we see this happen, but we can't be sure. More studies are needed. We see this happen, but we can't be sure. More studies are needed. Plausible deniability, and yet more and more weather modification projects go on. Now, there are some benign weather modification projects going on, but is there benign? Because it's always been a question of liability. When you make it rain here, you take the rain from over there, and someone's not going to be happy somewhere. So there's always liability. So of course the narrative can't be on the table. It can't be on the table. And yet the American Meteorological Society conference doesn't just talk about weather modification and climate and weather. They talk about water and water planning, and because it's all about the management of water. And so in 2017, when I discovered, and I saw it as a fluke, but I was prepped, I was revved. I knew that Doppler was implicated in creating tornadoes, but I wasn't very good in understanding how that was or why that was. I was still wrapping my head around all the different narratives and why this chemtrail activist wasn't talking to that chemtrail activist, and why everything was so compartmentalized. And I just took the gems, the truth, and made my own necklace. And I didn't even want to dive into the CO2 narrative. Like I said, well, if you think CO2 is causing global warming, or if you don't, my narrative, chemtrails is like bad for global warming. Aerosols are worse than CO2 for global warming, actually. And when I finally dove into the global warming narrative, as it is officially, because I was on board when I'd seen Bill Gates' movie, An Inconvenient Truth, in the 90s. I was all there. I was liberal. I wanted to save the earth. I got into chemtrails because after Katrina, I was already environmentally aware, but then there was the BP oil spill, and my heart broke. I couldn't eat the fish, and they were spraying Corexit, and I could tell that the protocol, the mainstream narrative was retarded. By retarded, I mean slow. Was retarded and behind human consciousness and human knowledge. We knew this is banned in other countries. We knew it's worse than the oil, and yet suppression of the evidence was more important than minimizing the damage. Mm-hmm. And so I clicked on what in the world are they spraying, thinking it was about Corexit. And then I find this out. And then I happen to see my sky disappear behind contrails. And I was more put back, not by the contrails, which were horrifying, to see this conspiracy, I don't know, this environmental thing that people were assuming was a conspiracy, but whatever it was people's denial and unwillingness to look up with me in my own community that was just horrific. And I set out to try and educate my community, but quickly found myself, even though I was popular, in the role of being the dunce, because chemtrails aren't real. If you go online, it tells you that, and that's it. You're not supposed to actually question climate science. But then when you find out and you dive into CO2, and this is the $1 trillion secret, and I made a video about it. I Google searched, you Google search, greenhouse gases, IP plus IPCC, and you look at graphs, and you look at the image results, so you could have like 100 images to look at, and you could click on them to get to the article. But all of them, absolutely all of them, showed me that CO2 was the largest part of the pie of the greenhouse gases. In anthropogenic greenhouse gases, CO2 was the climate driver. I mean, oh my God, I would kill myself just like if I took that in, I would have to stop breathing. I would have to, mask myself and sequester my own CO2. But just saying, it's frightening. But when you add to your search water vapor, you get a whole other set of pop-ups, also from the IPCC, which show water vapor as 90% of your greenhouse gases. And I have that in the slideshow. Later on, we can maybe click on some of the climate science there, but it's not a disputed scientific fact. This is very basic science. This is why I feel like I'm no great expert, but you don't have to be. I am the kid and the emperor wears no clothes. I'm just the one with no ego in it that said, hey, the emperor is naked. Look, it's water vapor. But I didn't understand why they suppressed it. Well, I saw in NASA's importance of understanding clouds that they say even small changes in the location and abundance of clouds can change the climate more than the anticipated changes brought about by greenhouse gases, human-produced aerosols, or other factors associated with global change. And I see that this says share, so maybe I should try to share.
Yeah, you can share, and then it'll come up, Raphaelle, on my side.
So just when you say, well, how can meteorologists not have figured out? Whether they figure it out or not, okay? The narratives are the narratives. You're not hired to figure things out. You're hired to know the narratives and to present it to the public the way you've been trained to. And people know when they step outside of narratives where their futures and their careers lie. So weather service employees tethered by illegal gag orders. Special counsel asked to reserve recent draft of blanket non-disclosure policies. Okay, why are meteorologists getting gag orders? We must ask ourselves that. Also, climate talks. The climate talks. Really, at the end of the day, the public is not welcome at it. So remember when the Paris talks? This was the public saying where we want our say, right? We don't have a say in this. This is not something we're open. It's very elitist. It's, again, top-down government, just like COVID. And I posted actually a connection behind the COVID climate narrative, because actually they said that, they were talking about what could be a vaccine for climate, the vaccine for climate in the COVID crisis. And of course, Greta has admitted that the climate crisis is about more than just the climate. It's about narrative. So, geoengineering, it's not a conspiracy theory. It is what they're proposing to put aerosols in the stratosphere to deflect sunlight, right? And bounce it back up to cool the earth. But what it also does is it traps heat in and is destructive to the ozone. And it does other things. Aerosols also, and this is a problem with not just plain aerosols, but agricultural aerosols and industrial aerosols. Creates drought, actually, believe it or not, which, exacerbates our situation. So, giant reflectors in orbit, they want to control, they want to play God, essentially. It's the ultimate hubris. So you're getting to see my whole screen, right? So
Yep.
they have here, this is a NASA document. Aerosols may drive a significant portion of Arctic warming. These are studies. You don't hear about that because it's not part of the narrative. These are NASA affiliates here. Here, more science for you. We have airplane contrails worse than CO2 emissions for global warming study. But let's not talk about science. Let's say we love it and then completely ignore it, shall we? You know, let's sorry, I'm a little bit of a wise puppy because the cliches are cheap, you know. Really, who is the enemy? Tyrant, Intro to Tyranny 101. Recognize your tyrant. He's the guy who controls the narrative and that censors his opponents and dissent. So let's just say that. Information should not be a threat unless you don't know how to think and it'll give you a total meltdown. This is weather as a force multiplier, owning the weather in 2025. An Air Force document written in the 90s. I don't know if it was 96 or 94. I'm a little rusty on my history, but I have a timeline for anyone wanting the details. I've done this. These guys, and they've tried to scourge this off the internet, but, and I'm going to have to make this bigger here for us. The climate engineering, exploring nuances, consequences of deliberately altering the Earth's energy budget. The Earth's energy budget also has to do with albedo. Albedo is the reflectivity of certain different surfaces. They have been fascinated with albedo modification since they've noticed persistent contrails in rare occasions. They are now no longer rare, and they can be made with chemicals. They can be made with microwaves. They can be made in different ways. What's important is the albedo modification. After that, chemtrails is just a delivery method and a fighting zone and something to keep your attention to something that is a moving target that you can never prove. No matter what they spray, I can't prove it. Even if they were 100% and I could get confession, I can't prove what, because no matter what I scoop on the ground, I can't prove what plane it came out of. And they know that. So they're comfortable with that. What they're not comfortable with is people realizing what I realized. And I'm not tooting my horn here. I'm saying that this discovery is bigger than me. And through the grace of God, or whatever you want to call it, like, wow, we got to notice $1 trillion obfuscation, because the reason they omit and they get away with leaving out water vapor from the narrative here, and you know, we'll get on this here. Mm-hmm. But wait, hold on. I'm still working to it, because I want you to know that the narrative has been off on your direct radiative forcing and climate effects of anthropogenic aerosols with different mixing states over China. This is they've got so many studies. I could bore you to death. And I lost all my bookmarks recently. I'm trying to get them back. But we have, a study, a university study where they raise Prince's increases of aluminum particles in the environment due to chemtrails during the period of autumn 2012 to summer 2015 within Lahore, Pakistan. They know, and they say, well, it's not a chemtrail, it's a contrail. And I beg you,
they try to hide behind that. Yeah.
Well, those contrails aren't condensing on pixie dust, right, darling?
No. Right.
So what is it condensing on? Ice crystals. And what are those ice crystals condensing on? Like what are they? There is jet exhaust. It is a dirty, if you look up the contents of jet fuel, it is a highly pollutive industry. And then there was also we see other elements to the weather modification thing. We see power plants causing freak storms, not so freak. We see them affecting the weather, creating the clouds that comes down as our weather in the afternoon. In the summertime, we see them going up from the power plant part of town and coming downwind and raining on us. And also they can sometimes they have to notice it and acknowledge it in their own literature. But NASA, again, let's go back here because we're getting close in their document. Even small changes in the abundance or location of clouds could change the climate, not the weather, which is local, but the climate, more than the anticipated changes caused by greenhouse gases, human-produced aerosols, or other factors associated with global change. NASA. Well, why are we ignoring contrails then? They're man-made clouds. They are jet cirrus. You say jet cirrus, and your meteorologist will have to take you seriously and step down from his high perch he's on when you call them chemtrails.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a linguistic trap. It's amazing. And then when you study how language has been weaponized against us and used to polarize us into camps, and people are like, they hear one word and it triggers them and they lump you into one big ball of dismissed right-wing extremists, whatever, no matter what it is.
Whatever the term is, yeah, exactly.
Yes. So, and when on the contrary, we're environmentalists. We want the true narrative outside of industry hands to get back into the hands of the people. We don't want the people forming environmental movements that are supporting industry.
No.
So I am telling you, believe it or not, and please debunk me, and I challenge you and I dare you. I am undebunked. They have threatened me. They have suppressed my work. They have, this is just so you see, this is a NASA document. Just, I don't want to be making up facts here, but this is, even small changes in the abundance and location of clouds could change the climate, right? Okay, so there it is here. And so, you could find this document online, The Importance of Understanding Clouds. This is the greenhouse gas, but it's the water vapor. And CO2 is what? The red. But human caused CO2 is like the smallest part of this. But how do they get away with murder? Because they say, and this is part of their narrative, is that it's water vapor, not the CO2. That's what we're saying. But they're saying, no, we don't affect. There's no anthropogenic effect on water vapor. That's just natural. The only effect to water vapor is when man increases CO2, increases global warming, and therefore there's more evaporation and therefore water vapor in the atmosphere. But I am here to challenge the limitations of that argument with basic science. And that's what I did at City Hall too, when I challenged them. And I told them, good luck fighting global warming with the wrong narrative. Because rolling out microwaves as a solution to global warming, as a sustainable solution, it's the false sustainability narrative is what I call it, sustainable solution to global warming, when water vapor is the most prominent greenhouse gas and microwaves have a warming effect, and we're seeing them interacting with weather, not weather acting and them reacting, but them acting and weather reacting. And we prove this. We triangulate over the radars time and time again. And then history triangulates on it further. And then we go back to Nikola Tesla, and then we answer more of history's mysteries with these pieces of the puzzle. And we have to rewrite history to tell us how we got into this, what I called world of hot water that we're in today. Because HAARP is an ionospheric heater. It's a microwave. Radar is a microwave. 5G is a microwave. These are all microwaves. And now, what do microwaves do besides, this is where I challenged my City Hall to prove it was safe for humanity. What do microwaves do? They bloom. They bloom bacteria, viruses, mold. They activate genes which create immune responses like the NLP3 and other things in the body's immune responses that get triggered to create the negative response to the CV that we're seeing being so devastating. So we're not saying that's causing the illness, but it doesn't help in all this. We're overlapping field of, it opens up the blood-brain barrier. This is science. This is not debatable. So I had an event the year prior to 2020, in 2019. I called it Putting It All on the Table. And the first thing we talked about was 5, don't know how much I could say, without censorship happening. But the next thing we spoke about was the Vajiji, the big V. And the history of it. People think, and this is research I did just not as somebody who was into weather, but as somebody who was becoming a mother who wanted to take on each V individually to see if it was necessary for my child. I had an open mind. I wasn't looking to have, I wasn't anti anything. I was very pro the science. And I found the science and the history was a gross misspeaking of the actual historic facts that are documented. And so I have a series. If you go to my weathertruth.org will always redirect to where you could find my movie. I'm going to develop that webpage, but on there, there's also a playlist on my YouTube, and there's a V Never Saved Us playlist. Hopefully that stays up. If not, I'll have to make sure I get it up elsewhere. I had things on BitChute. They went down. When they came back up, I wasn't up with them. So I have a very different narrative that I'm not going to dive into here because I'm going to protect this video and this information. Yeah. So that goes out. Mm-hmm. But it's all connected. It's all connected, and they're all tools in the globalist depopulation and control toolbox. Now, there's another element that kind of allows me to speak with certainty on other subjects. It was when I was on this path of discovery, I happened to meet a gentleman who I ended up dating, who kicked me down the rabbit hole, who was a survivor of satanic ritual abuse, and helped fill in a lot of blanks that I couldn't wrap my head around. But I don't know, how much of that and and everything in its place. I do want to finish with this. Yes. We have microwave heaters. We are denying the most prominent greenhouse gas, the most significant climate driver, because it's omitted from the narrative, because they just say, there's no anthropogenic effect, but we can't let them get away with it. We have to keep going back to microwaves, because not only are microwaves steering the storm, but microwaves are keeping the rain off of Australia during those fires that burnt up all those koala and all those lands, so that whoever can access resources underneath it or whatever, look into that further, but for yourselves. But it is a tool of political agenda. It is being used as a justification for the climate science narrative, which is more of the tools in the globalist depop controls centralization toolbox. And it is driving a wedge into people. It's making all the narratives. Okay, let's just start here. All the narratives have, let's take 100% of the truth. And then you have 10%, the most essential, crucial 10% is immediately hidden and taken off the top by the conspirators and controllers. And then the population is given the 90% that's left, and they each have half to fight over. But if they had that 10%, that 10% connects both of their sides and bridges the gap of the differences of what they're arguing against. And so, yes, our weather is changing. Yes, it is man-made. Yes, it is deliberate, actually. And yes, the climate science that we're being fed is a hoax. It's all true. We're all right, except we're missing the microwave element. And because you cannot hide Doppler radar, you can't. All they can do is tap dance around it. So they've followed me from my son's school. They've threatened me. They've harassed me. They've told me what my son had for dinner. They've eavesdropped on my laptop. They've had me followed. They disconnect my internet every hurricane. Sometimes I figure out there's a hurricane in the Gulf coming because my internet goes out and I can't get it back on. And I'm like, is there a hurricane? And then I go use a friend's computer. I'm like, look at that. Duh. You guys are so predictable. For whatever reason, I'm not a true threat. I'm not a whistleblower. I'm just a little thorn in the side. I'm just the kid pointing to the obvious. And all I can do is try and ignore and suppress my channel. So some people will click notify me and then click the bell, and then they don't find out about it. Yeah. But the work speaks for itself and begs some honest answers. And I'm just a little bit overwhelmed with COVID. And now I have 2 children instead of 1. I have a 7-year-old, and you asked me to talk about that. And I just gave birth at home to my little mermaid in a tub. She's not quite 6 months yet. And they're why I do it all. But before that, I wrote a children's chemtrail book because I saw other parents struggling to be able to tell the truth and fighting against propaganda. You had NASA coming out with a cloud chart that changes, new clouds. We interrupt this scheduled reality programming and to introduce a few new cloud types. Please insert that into the memory banks and proceed as you work. I mean, it was just, and it was exactly what I was hoping for it to be. It was controversial, but it was supportive of the people who knew the truth, who wanted to have something to share. It was also an educational tool for grown-ups. It created a debate online. I had 7 bad reviews before I sold my first book because, how could I get a bad review? Because it was about the trolls that were following me that got on there. But then other people came, and now I still have an overwhelming thumbs up, 90, 5 stars. So
wow, what a wealth of information that you've just like unloaded there, and such a refined story and information. Darlene, did you want to pick up on something before we continue into some other things Raphaelle wanted to talk about?
Well, before we get into that other story that I feel is pinnacle to, why we're here as well, Raphaelle, is what can we do as human becomings with this manipulated weather? Like, is there something we can pay more attention to outside of, being very conscious of 5G, obviously, because I believe with the chemtrails and all this manipulation they're doing with the weather, I mean, we're a very large majority of water. And of course, with all this aluminum and mercury and everything else being put into us, are we not just walking targets? Is that sort of the focus?
Well, yeah. So let's start off where we need to. Nothing I have said is a cause to panic. No. It is a cause for awareness. It is a cause for processing, because I take some processing and fact checking and researching, and then I say don't deny what is, deny its power over you. So when you realize how much has been done against us, the first thing you need to realize is how powerful we must be in order to have them work so hard to suppress us. So
that's very true.
That's the wonderful news. And so when you work through the fear and you work past the fear and you accept your own mortality, which is the first thing they did is sell us the fear of death. And there's a great talk with Dr. Martin who says, never mind the bankers, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, and never mind those guys. It's the death insurance policy salesmen that actually were controlling a lot of things. And it's incredible talk through the Church of Glad Tidings. Y'all should look up. Maybe I'll share that with you, darling, but with both of you. But anyway, it's this fear of death. So once we realize, well, anyways, we're eternal beings and we're so creative. We have all the solutions. They've had to suppress a lot of the people with the solutions. That's why they're able to keep their non-sustainable world up. And now they try to tell us that we're the non-sustainable thing, when really we have limitless solutions to all that. We need to be aware of what is going on so we can prepare ourselves. So there's detox, and darling, you have a lot to offer in the detox realm. I just heard noni is also good for spike proteins. Maybe I shouldn't say that word.
You can. I think that one's good.
Okay. There's I know pine. People say bark or needle. Do your own research. That's that's out there. We know they've suppressed different things so that they can push other things. We don't have to go into that per se right now, but there's that front. There's also, we all do what we can do. So what I'm looking for is someone to replace me who can take my work further. I've had people, radar technicians and people that have worked on the radom, agree with what my findings have been. I've had people whose job it is to determine which satellites they will send up to satisfy which amount of the highest end clients they're going to get. Tell me that I was on the right path when I had discovered this work, and I shared it with them at the American Meteorological Society conference, but they couldn't say more, but their eyes were like, that would be very good line of investigation to continue. And that was about as much as she could say, but her job was assessing satellites that go up into space. And she, with my water vapor and the microwaves, and she had a smile from ear to ear. She was nodding and she just encouraged me. And it was sincere. It wasn't, roll of the eye. But so what what we're looking for is, I already made a deal that I'm not taking this to court. Like I said, this is not just another piece of information to say, oh, well, there's all these things we can't prove. No, this is the proof. So if somebody is a lawyer, if somebody is upset that their town was taken out by weather, they can use this. They can study my how-to and triangulate in their town on the radar. And I'm happy to work with anybody. Raphaelle Reports at Gmail, that wants to learn how to. I've got some videos out that tell you how to triangulate on it. And if you know how to legally bring that about, you can do that. It's not my place. I'm overwhelmed. I'm just a little lady. I figured out a lot. I went back and rewrote history, went to Nikola Tesla, but I can't change the laws, but somebody else can. And the science is there. The patents are there. The history is there. This is nothing more than what Nikola Tesla said was possible 100 years ago, when he made fog so thick in his lab that he said, one day we'll be able, he couldn't see his hands. And he said, one day we'll be able to send, because he understood the universe is electric. It's not a matter of matter, it's a matter of electricity. And that once you figure out how to just stimulate the checks and balances in that, you'll be able to irrigate arid deserts. Distant lands. And they're doing this in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Dare I say on that point, I think, Raphaelle, and that's a whole nother show, but I think some things happened and took that technology away from us. I think humans were already living with free energy prior in history, and then something happened and they've been taking it away and getting us in all this oil and stuff, because even in our time we had trolleys and we had electric things, and they've taken all that stuff off the street, and I think that was the leftovers from a better day myself. But Darlene,
people that make cars that run on water, and they always end up disappearing.
Right. That's right. They shut these people down, just like they're attacking you for pointing out the truth.
It's just the basic science. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, what a wealth of information then you put. I mean, because I've researched a lot of what you've done, but man, you've really gone down the trail, like you've said. Darlene, you must have something else to mention before we move on to, other topics that we wanted to touch on today.
Well, I mean, obviously, there's so many questions that I want to ask, and we'll have to have Raphaelle back for sure. But what I do want to acknowledge is I am so thrilled to be in the presence of a brilliant mind like you, because this type of knowledge is not even one iota of interest to most beings walking this planet. And to have someone like yourself that's made such a massive discovery, which has been unacknowledged by the world, and then to actually find another lady that has some interest. But, we want to send this out to the listenership that if there is anyone that wants to connect with Raphaelle, she's already given her Gmail. That's raphaellereports@gmail.com. To connect with her, if you have someone that this is their high interest or their expertise, she's a mom of two. She is out there doing her part in the world, and we would really love to see this taken further. Because Raphaelle, I just so highly honor what you've done, because this is not the only thing that you study. And while we still have a few minutes, I would like you to speak to, and I know we'll have you back to go into it deeper, this rabbit hole you mentioned about this gentleman that you met. And we would like to really have you open up Pandora's box, because we're going to bring this and lead this into another gathering, another assembly, of course.
Yes, and this is what I say. I feel like I've been led, because I couldn't have had the pieces fed to me more than they were. And I in 2010, 11, after the BP oil spill, when I discovered the chemtrails and I started talking about it, and people were shunning that conversation, and I met my ex-boyfriend who was, who's this girl talking about chemtrails? Let me tell you, and this and that, and satanic pope, and I'm like, whoa, what? And his whole life he tried to forget where he came from and fit in. And because of chemtrails, because of the accelerating agenda and timeline that he was seeing, he wanted to speak out, and he didn't want to be. And so memories, I came to him at a time he was trying to get out suppressed memories, and I was open to receiving answers, because I didn't understand who would want to take out my skies. I didn't understand how that could ever be justified, and how could that be hidden, and how can people be complicit and how can something be so monstrous and yet be so secretive? Like, people can't keep a secret, can they? And then realizing there was a whole other world because of who this man was and who he shared with me. He was not, the conditioning that they did to him didn't do anything except serve to strengthen him in the Lord, according to him. And it's not my faith speaking here. This is his faith. He was safe through just the love of Jesus that he had from his older brother, who was buried on Halloween, that's the whole other thing. But he loved that older brother. And there were two other older brothers who the programming did take on. And they tried, he told me some horrific things about how they tried this programming on him. His father was a young project paperclip. So not a refuse, not an actual Nazi in his actions. He didn't serve under Nazis, but probably had family that came over that served, that were Nazis. And his father was a major at Lockland Air Force Base. And he remembers playing with his father's swastikas and his father's Air Force medals. And his father met his mother, who was a Project Monarch subject, which was a government sex slave program where they programmed different alters into these sexually violated and trained children who were groomed, and then later on they would marry off into the military. And these people were Satanists. She was a Jesuit Masonic military product, not to call another human being a product. I don't accept that, but byproduct of this programming. And she would have these different altars, and he remembers being in secret bases back in the 70s, seeing the technology where it was at and seeing where the technology was at back at the house, and the difference between what the military had in the top secret territory versus what was at home. And then going to human sacrifice in Laurel Canyon as a child, and with 200 to 300 people in attendance, and having his mom have to go to Bohemian Grove to save his life, and the kind of conditioning that happened at his home to try and make him a psychopath like they were, and to try and split his altars, and how this followed him throughout his life, and how he shook it off, but is always on his toes. And his message is, and kind of what his journey has been has been really, it's been a moving experience, but it was so incredible to have one person have so many pieces of the puzzle that just went snap right into it and brought it all together. And he would tell me things. There were sayings amongst them because they were family. They would live like in a Christian community. You would think they were boring Christians and want to stay away from them, but they were really Satanists who did horrible things to their children to train them, who were watching each other and part of ritualistic practices, but still respectable to the outsider. It's horrific to hear that, and they're in clusters throughout America. And, I don't know how far back this goes, and I think a lot of this is post-World War II. I think this formed, there was probably always a secret, a secret occult.
Yeah, I think these societies have gone longer than that. We're seeing the most recent. I think it goes back in human history. I've done a lot of research.
Yes, no, for sure. But as far as being thing in American government.
Yeah.
Well, no, when we have the whole design of Washington, D.C. as a cult. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah. The whole thing is, we could say maybe probably demonically led, and what is a demon? But, but I try to say, like, okay, whatever it is, it's been going on for a while, 200 to 2,000 years, but who's counting, actively, when I tell people, but a lot of people just said, this is so crazy. Well, it's nothing more. Let's just demystify it for a second. It's nothing more than the centralization of power and information and resources and assets and, and power over people from industry. And it's been going on since the foundation of industry. That's why George Orwell named his book 1984. He didn't call it 1985, and it was in 1983. And the reason for that was the Fabian Society was founded in 1884, 100 years prior. And so that was his warning to us, because the Fabian Society had things like, social oligarchy, and they created and exploited communism, fascism, crony capitalism. I mean, we were fans of free markets and whatnot, and capitalism versus communism, but even that's been exploited and ruined for us. And there needs to be responsible. The corporation can't be human, in my opinion, and it can't be bigger than life and human beings. If you can't hang them, then they shouldn't be a human being. I mean, you can't hold them responsible. So, everything I say, I can prove to the extent that you have the patience and time for it. And that's what my channel has been about. I'm scared to post new things about CV and the other discoveries that I've noticed based on the science and the history and everything we've put together, and it all overlaps. So I'm also on Rumble. I'm developing that channel. I'm Nola Butterfly there, and I'm starting a BitChute channel again on it's gonna be a Nola Butterfly, but so we're trying to get the basic message, basic science, first of all. Whether you believe in this occult and satanic element or not, I don't care. Basic science is water vapor is important. When it condenses, forms clouds. That is the largest climate driver of greenhouse gases, according to NASA and science, and microwaves affect water vapor. That's all I need to really say. That, let's just break it down. Water vapor is affected by microwaves, and microwaves are in our midst. They don't want you to know that. I'm just here telling you basic science. You can take me out, but it's an idea whose time has come, because it's the truth, and you can't unknow it once you know it. So look at your radar. If you need some help to learn some tricks on how to triangulate on it, I've got a how-to series, and I can explain further. It's important. I'm trying to reach out to Europeans now, because now they're saying, oh, Europe's going to get horrible weather now. Now they're selling it to Europe. And they have been since they've been doing their tornadoes. Bit by bit, the grid has been going up in the world. Don't think this is an American problem. Don't think it's an Australian problem, or it's just the G5. So I was saying, Ben Livingston had said, I'm going to go back to that. He was the father of weaponized weather. He said he took out the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Vietnam years earlier with a few cloud seeding projects. He said, somebody said, how easy would it be to control the world weather? He says, well, there's only really 7 main intersections of the world's jet stream currents, 7 intersections. Control those and you control the weather in the world. Now, that where you send the jet stream is one thing, but then locally, these local weather radars, and some of them are mobile, but we're just telling you what we're seeing from the ones that are stationary. And a lot of people have a hard time saying Doppler radar steers the storms. And that's how you know when they're gatekeepers. There have been a lot of people that try to discredit it, and they can't say it. They just, because they don't want to bring the attention to basic science, because, like I said, once you know, you can't unknow. And their narrative is destroyed, because it's one thing if global warming is CO2 based, oh, we're the enemies. But if it's microwave based, what are the sources of microwaves? And let's work on that.
Well, that's a story. I mean, HARP and everything they're doing. And I think we're seeing the effects of it right here in British Columbia. With some of those targeted places, dare I say. Darlene, I mean, child trafficking and those kinds of things, and everything that was alluded to there by Raphaelle, it's a...
I got more details for another show, and it's just too much to unpack.
Oh, yes, and exactly. It's so much to unpack, but we did want to touch on it, and that side of the ugly side of humanity, I've looked at a lot in that, and it's something that needs to be talked about, and people need to come to awareness that these atrocities are going on. And Darlene, please join in and have whatever you have to say about what a wealth of information Raphaelle's just unloading on us.
Well, it is so intricately woven. I mean, there's honestly hours and hours of dialogue that we could have here, Brian, but I guess what I really want people to do is to get in touch with Raphaelle. She has a plethora of knowledge and wisdom that she can prove. And she says, once you know, you can't unknow. once you see, you can't unsee. So I'm asking people to look at this with different eyes and to hear this with, listen to this with different ears, and to reach out to Raphaelle. So that's Raphaelle reports at gmail.com. You know, get a hold of her and find out how you can assist. This is massive, and we need to get this information out to the globe.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can reach her at Nola Butterfly on YouTube, and I believe weathertruth.org will lead you right there too, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that right, Raphaelle?
Yes, sir. Weathertruth.org, or you go put me straight into youtube.com/Nola Butterfly, and you'll come up there.
No, that's
I'm on my page.
wonderful.
Check out the different titles. I have things on contrails. I have things on the microwaves. I have a playlist.
Yeah.
I have things on the V and how the sustainability narrative is false and what it takes to fix it.
And get that book that Raphaelle has written for children on chemtrails. So
Yes.
While it's still up on Amazon or wherever else. So I think there's an ISBN, Raphaelle, that you can maybe share with others when you speak with them. But that book needs to be in every child's hands so they have an understanding.
And grown-ups as well, because it's a good educational tool. And I don't know, we're probably out of time for a 5-minute video, huh?
Well, actually, if you have it there handy, you're more than welcome.
I do. I'm going to share my screen here, and let's see, where's the share screen? Share screen.
By all means.
Because this is going to be the teaser, that entire screen.
Sure, let's give them a tease for the next time we get together. And what a fabulous conversation we've had, everybody, about weather modification and all the depth of knowledge and insight Raphaelle has shared with us today. And go and do your own research, like Darlene and I always say, and Raphaelle has also encouraged you to do. So I see it coming up here. I'll share the screen here.
Let's make sure. Okay, great. And
rise up, humanity.
It's currently running the facility. I've mentioned that it's our understanding through the president of UAF that the plans are to move forward and demolish the facility this summer. So the question to you is that accurate? Can you explain why? And then perhaps to both you and Mr. Schaefer, is there any benefit in exploring a potential relationship with the University of Alaska to perhaps take over the HARP?
Thank you, Senator. The Air Force has gotten great value out of HARP in the past. We took over from the Navy and managed it, and actually did a number of experiment campaigns up there, and have finished our work that we're interested in doing up there. We've moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere, which the HARP was really designed to do, was to inject energy into the ionosphere, be able to actually control it. And but that work has been completed.
So that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and to control the rest. Would you explain what you were trying to say?
Well, what I was trying to say is exactly what I said. There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own that not only does it exist, but that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War. You might want to touch base with Senator Pell.
I just want to repeat before I turn to
So yes, but we do have all that information.
You're saying the government has created weather tampering techniques so that the, quote, New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans
Worldwide.
Millions of Americans, and to control the rest.
Yes, sir, and that's my belief. As bizarre as that sounds, if somebody had told me that equipment even existed 10 years ago, I would have thought they were nuts, sir. And at this point in time, we have all the documents to prove it. And if you think that 85 tornadoes takes place in the middle of our growing area by simultaneous accident, I'm sorry. With the equipment that's already set up internationally, and as bizarre as that is, it is proven and documented. We will supply you with those documents. As bizarre as that is, I would say that weather wars, and this is quoting actually Senator Claiborne Pell himself, that they are the greatest weapon ever created in the world, and that's the senator's own statement. So yes, I do stand on that.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, sir. What is this technology?
Essentially, we're drawing oceanic rain systems that exist over the oceans into geographic targets, into our agricultural areas. The technology uses electromagnetics, so we're not interfering with the atmosphere or with the environment. We're not damaging it. We're not using chemicals fired through rockets like other technologies use. We use a very gentle but powerful technology, launching electromagnetics into the atmosphere to modify the flow of the weather system over the ocean and drawing it into a target. So to try and keep it simple, we establish some kind of link with the weather system, and once we've seen through satellite meteorology that we have that link, we're able to draw that system in incrementally towards the target, such as in this case, the Horn of Africa.
So let's take this one as a case study. This was April 20th through the 21st of 2012. This was a visual that they showed on the website. And just as an example of their composite map, and I thought it was a great example to use because here you can actually see where the front coming through. And then the Doppler radars build a wall. They bloom out, stopping it from continuing on, and it sends it up instead. So it's coming across, but the blooms come, and then it breaks it up and sends it out. And this is even illustrated really well on the slower one here. See, this Doppler turns that, takes that line of weather, and because it's it goes like that, goes around it, like it splits it up like it's Laffy Taffy being pulled on a line of conveyor belts. Low pressure, low pressure, low pressure, high pressure.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So that's just the tip of the iceberg, and we invite anyone listening to see the story as it unfolds.
It explains lockstep.
I'm sorry. Let me stop share. Did I stop the sharing?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
I don't know. Okay. So anyway, the World of Hot Water is a documentary series that I started on. I can do about 2 more seasons. I have the information, but I only did 1 season, and we went back to Nikola Tesla in that season. I don't know if I'll ever get to finish this work. What matters is we started and other people can finish it, because now we're on the right track with the history's narrative. Now we understand where to look and what we're seeing. We understand it isn't something they're just rolling out now. It is the end of 100 years of completion of the weaponization and the vision of Nikola Tesla in the hands of the few that could liberate us. That's the good news. This technology could liberate us. It shows us everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. When we understand that, then we can get into the healing modalities even better, because we can hack that as well. Just want to say there is a water that a few sips can help protect the cell at aquanew.com. It's hydrogen water, and it helps balance out the radiation, the positive ions in the cell. It gives more negative ions, so we recommend that just as a little quick solution to some of the microwave issues and radiation we're facing from that. It's good cell protection, but there's a lot of other solutions. But anyway, so I made a movie condensing the series. It's called World of Hot Water, the movie. It's on my front page. Please check it out. Even though it's 2.5 hours long, condensing the series, you only need 1.5 hours of it to really get the whole story and get some good Nikola Tesla narratives there.
Oh, it's fantastic. What a story and a conversation today. Darlene, please go ahead.
Well, I'm completely gobsmacked, and I'm not. I mean, I know how brilliant this woman is, and I really believe, Brian, we need to have her back so we can get this story unfolding. And like she said, the information, the knowledge, the platform, the foundation is there, and we're looking for people that can take this further because the world needs to know this information. So Raphaelle, we are so thrilled that you have made this massive discovery really for all of humanity. And I want to just correct you because you said you're just this. Well, you're an incredibly brilliant, powerful mama.
Yes, I'm the human potential. Right?
Absolutely.
We are all these incredible, infinite, endless beings having this very limited experience that, is going to turn our soul, is fertilizer for the soul. And so we got this, but we just got to play it out on Earth. And it is an illusion, but it's an important illusion, and it's one that matters. So be fearless and unstoppable. Don't deny what is, but deny its power over you. So we have to know about the darkness, but then we can also embrace the light even more. We can't deny it, but we don't get stopped by it. We know, just to help us strategize a little better and get the
you're
sense of
speaking our language, Raphaelle.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, and thank you so much for joining us and sharing it with Darlene and I and all the viewers and everybody this may reach. I mean, what a fascinating story. Everybody needs to know, and go look at Raphaelle's research on NOLA Butterfly, weathertruth.org, and please say your contact for getting in touch with you for organizing with people.
Sure. Raphaelle Reports at Gmail is just a good filter email for me. And youtube.com/NOLA Butterfly. And it's there. Yeah, I would love to educate anyone who's interested. If I get too many people, I'll just make a Zoom and put everybody on there at one time and do it that way. So,
yeah,
we want to get this out. This is when you see it, you can't unsee it. So come on, man. The water's fine.
That's right. Darlene, any last words on this conversation?
Well, there are no last words because I know we're going to be revisiting this conversation.
I mean just today, not forever.
Raphaelle, we want to thank you on behalf of the Mad Watcher TV, and we're so grateful for, again, your discovery, because the work you're doing it's so important. I'm not finding the words right now. I know we're going to have you back. I know we're going to speak more, and Brian and I and the listenership are going to help you find the people you need to take this where this needs to go, on behalf of you and on behalf of Nikola Tesla, of course.
Yes. I think he wants the world to know at this point anyway.
Yes.
He tried to protect us to the extent that he could.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. He's got a fabulous bunch of information out there. And hopefully we're going to see some of those patents unveiled in the near future once we get all this stuff figured out and moving on to a better world of light and fight the dark. Thank you for joining us, Raphaelle.
Thank you. Thank your viewers for tuning in. Appreciate the time.
Darlene, thanks for joining me again today, and we'll be seeing you soon on another episode and whoever we have. And Raphaelle, I look forward to joining you again here at the Mad Watcher TV, and maybe one day when this is over, we'll see you in Louisiana or down in your neck of the woods.
Oh, I would love to be a tour guide.
Yeah, do a live show from there, Darlene?
Oh, it's going to happen, absolutely.
That's right. We just got to manifest it. So awesome. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
These are manifesting times. Be very, very careful with your thoughts. This is what the work is showing us right now too. We really have to be super responsible with art. That's why we can't give in to fear, and we have to just embrace the truth.
That's right, everyone. The Mad Watcher TV, no fear, everyone. I'm Brian Condi, and
I'm Darlene Condi.
And we're the Mad Watcher TV. We'll see you again, everybody, the next time. Thanks for joining us.